What's up, everybody? We are in 1 Kings 15, roughly page 368 in the scriptures. Bear, what's the scriptures? Google is your friend on this one. www.isrmessianic.org or grindstoneministries.com. 15. And in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijam became king over Judah. And he reigned 3 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the granddaughter of Abishalom. And he walked in all the sins of his father, which he had done before him, and his heart was not perfect to Yahweh his Elohim, as was the heart of his father David. But for David's sake, Yahweh his Elohim gave him a lamp in Jerusalem, to raise up his son after him by establishing Jerusalem. For David did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh, and did not turn aside from all that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. And out of that union with Bathsheba, their first child died. Their second child became the bloodline of Yeshua, of Jesus the Christ. And so, interesting that we see the prophesied Messiah being a king in the line of David. And for David did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh, and did not turn aside from all that he commanded him all the days of his life. So, Yeshua, Jesus, kept the commands of Yah. Who'd have thought? And there was fighting between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. So Rehoboam and Jeroboam, the king of Judah, the king of Israel, bad deal. And the rest of the acts of Abijam, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? And there was fighting between Abijam and Jeroboam. And Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, Jerusalem. And Asa, his son, reigned in his place. And in the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa became king over Judah. Remember, two-house theology. Israel and Judah have now broken apart. So you've got Judah, Benjamin, and most of the Levites consolidated around Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, and then you've got everybody else, the other 10 tribes, Simon, Gad, Naphtali, Manasseh, Ephraim, so forth and so on, and some of the Levites elsewhere. And they are the tribe, the house of Israel are the 10 tribes. The house of Judah are the 2, Benjamin and Judah. Which, interestingly, starting around Genesis 37-ish, you can go read the story of Israel and his sons, and Joseph and Judah and Benjamin, and how Judah takes care of Benjamin. It's kind of like an overseer for Benjamin. And you can see, even as they go forward and they develop from individuals that the tribes are named for to the tribes themselves, there's some qualities here that are pervasive all the way down to at the tribal level, as they go from one man, the tribe's named for, to hundreds of thousands of people in each tribe. And they still maintain some of these qualities and some of these relational posturings between the different tribes. It's interesting. It's an interesting study to do. And he, verse 10, reigned 41 years in Jerusalem, Asa, and his grandmother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And Asa did what was right in the eyes of Yahweh, and as his father David had done. So Asa was a good dude. And put away the cult prostitutes from the land, and removed all the idols that his father had made. And he also removed Maacah, his grandmother, from being Sovereigness' mother, the queen's mother, because she had made an abominable image for an Asherah, a pillar, an obelisk, a steeple. Yes, Google it. Origins of the steeple, or DuckDuckGo it, or whatever. I don't care. How could you say Google? It's an evil. You're watching this on YouTube, which is owned by Google, which is owned by Alphabet Corp. Suck it up, Buttercup. And Asa cut down her abominable image and burned it by the Wadi Kidron. Could you imagine if a man of God today rolled up to a church and threw a winch line around a steeple, cut it down, and burnt it, all of the mainstream Christians would lose their ever-loving minds because of this abomination that was done against God without realizing the abomination was putting a steeple on top of the building in the first place. And Asa cut down her abominable image and burned it by the Wadi Kidron. But the high places were not removed. However, Asa's heart, the high places being these places where the Israelites worshipped other false gods. They had not temples per se, but they had slaughter places, altars, etc. in these high places. Physically high places. Up in the mountains, on the bluffs, so forth and so on. But the high places were not removed. However, Asa's heart was perfect with Yahweh all his days. And he brought into the house of Yahweh the set-apart items of his father, and his own set-apart items, silver and gold and utensils. And there was fighting between Asa and Baasha, morning bro, king of Israel, all their days. And Baasha, king of Israel, came up against Judah, and built Ramah to keep anyone from going out or coming into Asa, king of Judah. So this dude Baasha was the king of Israel. Remember, two-house theology here, two-house theory. I mean, it's not a theory. It's obvious. Just read the damn Bible. It's right there. So, Baasha is like, I will cut off Judah by building Ramah, and then I'll have a forward operating base in Ramah so that I can harass Judah. And Asa took all the silver and all the gold that was left in the treasuries of the house of Yahweh and the treasuries of the king's house, and gave them into the hand of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, son of Tabramam, son of Hazan, king of Aram, who dwelt in Damascus, saying, let there be a covenant between you and me, as there was between my father and your father. Look, I've sent you a present of silver and gold. Come, break your covenant with Baasha, king of Israel, so that he withdraws from me. So, Asa is looking to undermine the military relationship between the king of Damascus and Baasha. And Ben-Hadad listened to sovereign Asa and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel. So they turned the turncoats here, essentially. And struck Ion and Dan and Abel-Beth Maacah and Kinneroth and all the land of Naphtali. And it came to be so. Think about this. Israel is staging for an attack into Judah. And as they're doing this, their allies, their mercenaries who they bought off, have now been bought off again by Israel, or I'm sorry, by Judah, right? So the target that they're about to attack has bought off their mercenaries. So in their rear, their mercenaries, Israel's mercenaries, have now turned coat and have gone behind them. And the cities that they have left, the space that they have left unoccupied or less defended because they're on the offensive over here, are now being attacked by formerly their own people, their mercenaries, back here. How well are they going to be able to persecute and attack on Judah now, when in the rear they're being attacked by their own mercenaries, and their women and children have been left unprotected or less protected because they're over here on the offensive? Pretty smart. Pretty smart for Israel. Not so smart for Judah. I'm sorry. I keep getting these two messed up this morning. More coffee is indicated. Pretty smart for Judah and King Asa. Not so smart for Israel. And it came to be when Baasha heard it that he stopped building Ramah and returned to Tirzah. Yeah, we're not going to build this fob when everything behind us is getting destroyed. Then King Asa summoned all of Judah. None was exempt. So all the men, everybody from Judah, and they took away the stones and the timber of Ramah, which Baasha had used for building. And with them, King Asa built Giva of Benjamin and Mitzpah. So they took all the building materials that were going to be used to build the fob that Israel could attack them with. and took it away and built their own cities. And the rest of all the acts of Asa, and all his might, and all that he did, and all the cities which he built, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? But in the time of his old age he was diseased in his feet. There's a story about that in 2 Chronicles, I believe. Literally. You know how people go, squirrel? Like, as if there's a shiny object over there. There are squirrels chasing each other in a tree right over there, and it is actually quite distracting. And Asa slept with his fathers. He died, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, his father. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his place. And Nadab, son of Jeroboam, became the king over Israel. So, alright, regime change. Asa died. Jehoshaphat takes over for Judah. Now, Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, became the king over Israel in the 2nd year of Asa, king of Judah, and he reigned over Israel 2 years. 2 years is a short reign. And he did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and walked in the way of his father, and in his sin by which he had made Israel sin. So this Nadab did all the bad stuff that Jeroboam did. Remember, Jeroboam was like an abomination. Bad dude. So Nadab, his son, isn't any better. Then Baasha, son of Ahijah, of the house of Issachar, conspired against him. Remember Baasha, who was the king of Israel? Conspired against him, and Baasha struck him at Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines, for Nadab and all Israel had laid siege to Gibbethon. So, there's a lot going on here. In Israel, Baasha was king. But then the son of Jeroboam became king over Israel for a period for 2 years. And so this dude, Nadab, decides, I'm going to go attack the Philistines. And again, while he's about to go put the Philistines under siege, Baasha arrays his forces from the house of Issachar, conspires against him, and goes up against him and kills him. And Baasha killed him in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned in his place. So Nadab had a very short reign because Knight of the Long Swords, Long Knives, what's his face? Baasha takes him out. You see the level of infighting that's going on here. You know when, see, everybody likes to quote Abraham Lincoln, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Yeah, Messiah said that. Abraham Lincoln was quoting Jesus, Yeshua, when he said that. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And so you've got all this infighting happening amongst the 12 tribes, and this king and that king, and then this king killed that king, and then knives and treachery. And verse 29, and it came to be when he became king that he struck all the house of Jeroboam, Baasha. He did not leave to Jeroboam anyone breathing until he had destroyed him according to the word of Yahweh, which he had spoken by his servant Ahijah the Shilonite, because of the sins of Jeroboam which he had sinned, and by which he had made Israel sin, because of his provocation which he had provoked Yahweh Elohim of Israel. And so, in short to say, Baasha, even though he was an evil dude, he gave Jeroboam what he had coming to him. Because Jeroboam was not a good dude either. And the rest of the acts of Nadab, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? And there was fighting between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. In the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, Baasha, son of Ahijah, became sovereign over all Israel in Tirzah, and reigned 24 years. This dude, Baasha, and he did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and walked in the ways of Jeroboam, and in his sin, by which he made Israel sin. So he was not a good dude. Baasha was not a good dude. Now, he killed off Jeroboam, who was not a good dude. He also killed off Nadab, son of Jeroboam, who was not a good dude. But he was not a good dude either. And he was king of Israel, the 10 tribes, that were all not doing what they were supposed to be doing, who were all constantly at war with Asa, who was a good dude, who was the king of Judah. But he was a good dude in that he had to undo all of the garbage that had come before him, cutting down the Asherim, putting away the cult prostitutes from the land, removing the idols that the fathers had made. The good that Asa did was undoing all the bad that had come before him. And as perhaps tricky as all of that was, just that one short chapter in Kings, that's indicative of how things go for Israel and for Judah for the rest of this chapter and for that historical period of time. They were at each other's throats constantly. They were, whoever the good leaders were constantly having to undo the bad of the bad leaders before them. It sounds a lot like the American political system right now, except the long knives haven't really come out for us yet. But there's a lot of infighting in this historical period of Israel. There's a lot of instability because of that. You can't prosper without stability. You never know when your brother's going to try and stick a knife in your kidney. Makes it difficult to make long-term plans. And a lot of the military might at this point was conscripted or hired out. So less than professional armies. It's just a really bad period of time for Israel, this period of infighting, and it's reminiscent for me of where we are right now in the United States. We're just starting to walk up to this line of brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, father against son. And that's what we're seeing in Israel here, is brother against brother. These 12 tribes will not get along. And even the good people within the house of Judah and within the house of Israel, they're so consumed with constantly having to undo the bad that came before them that making forward progress is very difficult for them. So, bless y'all. Shalom.